Excellent.
Howdy.
That's well put together, Chris. I like that.
Yeah, it's a bit slow, a bit slower than the last one, but I didn't know whether you would be into the 80s new wave synth. So welcome everybody to episode 9 and the new, we'll call it the new last transmission because it is going to be a little bit different. So thanks everybody for coming tonight and showing your support. So Paul Sinclair is the new edition, and we've been talking about this for a while now, haven't we? So shall we tell people what it is that we're looking to do over the next year with this channel?
Yeah, obviously we will have guests on. We've talked about that, but primarily we want the interactive audience. You guys out there are the most important thing to any YouTube channel, to any podcast, I think. As I say, when me and Les do the truth proof, we want your input, we want your exchanges, and we want to pick topics. Chris has picked some topics this week which we're going to cover, and hopefully put your questions in capital letters and fire them at Lorraine, who's doing moderating, and we can go from there. But we've got lots of things to cover, haven't we? I mean, we might go off on a tangent, but
they're always going off on a tangent, and I think that's what I like about doing these shows, especially with my waffle. People should probably get used to that if you're not used to it already. But I think that tends to be what happens with this, because there's so many questions that come in, and all this information is connected in one way or another. So I think we should probably kick off tonight. Tonight's show is obviously about, it's quite a broad question. What do they want?
Yeah.
And I think it covers various aspects, and we'll get into that. But I think we'd be daft, because I've been mithered to death about it, and rightly so, about covering the drone situation, and I think we'd be daft not to cover that. I know you and Les touched on it the other night in Truth Bill. Have you had any more thoughts about that situation and what you think is going on?
I have, because I'm guilty of saying, I live in my own little bubble, and that's not fair on our audience, at all. So I have been looking into it, and what I think we should trust as instincts when we're looking anything of an unexplained nature, and if it kind of rings true, if it's giving you all, let's assume it's UFOs, cryptid related, if it's giving you that buzz, that kind of, the chances are you're onto something. But my instincts tell me, and I'm maybe not going to sit well with a lot of people in audience, that this is not UFO stroke alien related. I don't know what you think.
I think I think it's got to be the sort of default position for those of us that have been in and around it for a long time. It feels like a long time. It feels longer than it is, actually. But 15, 20 years that are looking into this. Obviously, Bluebeam, which is the project that this is meant to be, or people are hinting that it's Bluebeam. I'm not sure whether it's Bluebeam. There was another project, actually, talked about in the 50s called Project Starlight. I don't know how many people know about Project Starlight. I've only just learned about it just recently myself, but a very similar, I think a government contractor was approached by the government to sort of portray UFOs, and they wanted the whole shebang. They wanted the feel of it. They wanted the noise. They wanted the whole 3D experience back in the 50s, and this was meant to be done with balloons. So it's not such a novelty. So I think the idea, most of us in here, most of the people watching, most of the people that are into the subject, obviously, that's got to be the default position for most people. Yeah, but I think it might come down to personal experience as well, because that's obviously something I've not got with this phenomena. You have, and some other people have. So I can understand how that might shift someone's perspective a little bit. What do you think?
I think you're right, and what I find interesting is, and I don't want, we're not about East Yorkshire today, but the discs that we're seeing, the objects that we've been filming the last 2 or 3 months, 3 months, sound remarkably similar to what are being reported all over the world, which is strange because we're in a little nondescript place, and you wouldn't think that, would you? But what are they? Let's chuck that out to people in chat. Come on, back at us with some questions, please, or your views, because you're just as valid as we are. But what are they? Are they a distraction? And if they are, what for? Because it strikes me that we're seeing so many of these things in areas that got plenty of eyes to the sky, and now even more so because they've been brought to public attention all over the world. Yet we don't seem to be able to be getting anything concrete. So what do you think they are, people? And if they're a distraction for what? Is it something that's going to be coming?
I think the reason I've gone to that position, and I'm hoping that there are people in the chat that think differently. I'm hoping that there. I've just yet to be convinced by any sort of evidence that it's anything other than. I'm reluctant to call it a psyop because it's that again. That's not a new position. It's not. What I've learned with this subject is often it's more than one agenda. There's more than one motive a lot of the time for what these people are doing. Back in the day, it would have been a think tank coming up with this. Back in the 50s and 60s, it would have been a think tank. Nowadays, they're using like advanced AI systems to think and run scenarios so that they know what the outcome is going to be. Yeah. So I just think that they want maximum bang, for the buck, if you want to call it that. There's always multiple things going on. There's Lenny. There's Lenny saying, I think it's mostly military drones.
I would agree. And I noticed Alison had asked, what did we think to Trump's I missed the question end of it, military police. However, I've not got any knowledge of it really. Right, what do you think about Trump's space police? Looks like you have a bit more knowledge of that than we have, Alison. But no doubt he's got something policing what he considers or America considers their space.
Well, yeah. Why would you say that? No, yeah. I think what Alison's getting at there is that a lot of people say that this is a precursor, and it's like a little bit of a softener for the disclosure of technology that they've had for a long time, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, you've just come up with that word, technology. Then, so if these are drones, and I don't mean conventional, they're far from conventional, especially if it's true that they've sent F-15s up and different types of aircraft, fast jets, and they can't get near them. So whose tech is it? And I said this other night on Truth Proof, is it our own tech? Is it British? Is it American tech testing our own military to see whether we can, and if we can't fettle it, if we can't bring it down, if we can't get near it, then the potential then is for it to be tested on hostile soil, should we say, because we know they're not going to be able to be touched. I don't know, because we know that drones, the military drones, some of them can stay up. I think it's the Reaper can stay up like 27 hours. The Global Hawk, and I'm not a drone expert here, but I've just been looking because I knew we were talking about this, 30 hours. But they're not drones in the sense that we're looking at above these military installations. These things are zipping about all over. These things are just there in high altitude. These, what we're talking about, that are staying up hours and hours. So these, where are they coming from? People are saying that they're coming from below the sea. Is there any proof of that? I'm not seeing proof of anything that people are talking about. That's what I'm saying.
No, and also, even if they were coming from beneath the sea, that doesn't, again, it doesn't scream ET, does it? It just screams to me that we've had that technology for a long time. There's enough whistleblowers and enough information out there in declassified documentation to say that, this is nothing new under the sun, so to speak. So, there's too many red flags. The idea that it's even been reported on the news is the first red flag. If they want you to know about it, then there's obviously a very good reason for that.
Absolutely.
Normally, if this was some sort of, again, like, I mean, this nuclear thing has come up, which I just find, again, not to come over insulting, but it just sounds nonsensical that they would be deploying these drones to search for this
or some kind of radiation leak that from
some missing radiation. It's not Back to the Future, it's not Doc Brown stole.
Well, not only that, it'd imply then that there's more than one because they're in different countries.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. This is some sort of program running, and to me, it just screams, again, it lends into the theory, if you like, that all these government bodies, or at least, I won't call them government, that's probably the wrong word, these private, let's call them breakaway civilizations, are connected in every country. So it's the elite, if you like, and certain groups and certain families from all over the world, all united under this one plan, whatever that plan might be. I think sounds to me like that plan could well be space exploration. Now, a lot of researchers talk about they don't want humans going into space because of the war threat, because we're a warmongering sort of race, and I get that. I mean, absolutely. How can you not buy into that idea? We generally, I think people by nature, humans are very well natured. They're empathic, and all the right emotions come over, love and kindness and all the rest of it. It's just a select few. The world would be in a very different place if it weren't for certain people on this planet. But that's, you could argue that that's been going on for millions of years, couldn't you?
I would say it's people and groups of people. I mean, the drones, I've not heard of anybody saying that they're creating fear, mass fear in populace, the mass fear in populations at world. But what's going to come next? Because if the fear equals control, so I'm asking the question constantly: what's coming next? Because it is unprecedented that we're getting lots of news coverage and we're hearing a lot about these drones, and I'm wondering if fear comes next, and if it's control that comes after fear, then control for what? I mean, are we on the brink? I don't want to sound like some kind of doomsday scenario, but are we on the brink of another war? Everything sort of seems to be pointing that way. All the literature, everything coming out of the news outlets, and we know we don't follow mainstream news that much, but it's all doom and gloom, and we're on the edge of something. So there's fear constantly being drip fed into us.
So there's a comment up there: with the tendency toward multiple phenomena, have we had any New Jersey Devil sightings given the drones are being sighted over the Pine Barrens? I mean, that's
I know where it's coming from.
Yeah, it's an interesting comment, actually, because obviously we've got to acknowledge at the same time that we're privy to no information whatsoever. Do you know? And the media, I won't say the media less so. The media are just given something to report. So what the actual agenda is behind any of this, if it is one agenda, which I don't think it is, there could be something going on. And again, I'm a bit like you. I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but I find it, I mean, you and I briefly mentioned the drone technology, and just to put in again with the drone thing, why are they called drones? Why is that word even being used? What makes it a drone? Isn't it a UFO? Isn't
UAP,
it a UAP?
UFO, yeah, absolutely.
Who is first? It's almost like these. I mean, this could be pure accident, but why are they using the word drone? Who first reported it as a drone and why?
Yeah, and I agree, but I see where we'll get to Matthew's question in a minute. But I see where that last question will coming from. It'd be interesting to know if there's a kind of an upsurge in other types of unexplained phenomena on the back of these drone sightings. And let's assume that the drones are man-made tech. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't have an upsurge in other unexplained phenomena if we put the theory that I'm always kicking around, that we could actually not create these things but evoke these unknowns. And if we're getting into that emotional state by virtue of these drones presenting, then who's to say that other things aren't going to present? I mean, there's other people saying it's like we're being prepared for the second coming. I mean, I'm firm advocate of saying let's keep all cards on table. Let's not pull any off. We might roll his eyes and think, nah, that's just a load of rubbish. But who's to say it's not? Do you know who's to say that there isn't some advanced intelligence on its way?
Yeah, well, also I think what Matthew's saying there. Thanks for the question, by the way, Matthew. I think what do they mean our drones or another entity's drones? Again, it's always with these things. I always find it interesting to examine the language they're using. And again, they're not saying anything. They're not saying a great deal about anything other than we don't know. Which, if your default position is to create confusion and chaos and order out of chaos, you could argue. Those people, some of you guys will know where that saying comes from. It fits the agenda, doesn't it? So if the plan is to confuse people and worry people and just cause a little bit more anxiety in the public domain, like people aren't anxious enough already, And again, we should probably throw in the mix here that, the inauguration is coming in a few weeks. So there's that big event. There's also, I believe so, this year there has been apparently 40 elections for new leaders, which is unprecedented, apparently.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of these countries are asking to go in different directions. Is this actually between, we'll call them the elites, or we'll call them the breakaway civilizations? I wonder if this period in time, or certainly before 2030, is this a handover of the reins to power, maybe? Or
is this a distraction? We need a distraction. If like you just said, there's the inauguration and Trump's coming in, and it's once again it seems to me that the Biden administration are hell bent on going to war with Russia. Are they trying to get there before before the inauguration? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it seems so, but it's no
worries.
Sorry, mate. Can you just take over? I'll see what that problem is. I know what's going on.
Yeah, of course I can. Yeah. Well, we need a few questions, but so basically, I'd be asking what are the benefits of such an operation? Right, John Alexander, Paul, Chris. A few weeks ago on Truth Book, I asked the question: do you think something is going to manifest soon? I'm going to stick my neck out on the block and say some of this is NHI. Come on, help me here, Chris. What's NHI?
Non-human intelligence.
Right. Sorry, John, but I'm glad Chris has come back, else I'd have looked non-human intelligence here, answering your question. It could be, John. What's your views on that one, Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to sit my neck out on the block and say I think it's highly likely. I think in general, just given the nature of what you're doing up at the cliffs and what's going on up here at Winter Hill and all over the world, Hesdalen and all these other places, there does seem to be some interest, and I think this is probably a good time to jump into our first topic about it. Okay. I think we've got to preface what's going on here, because it's difficult to talk about what their agenda is without knowing a little bit more about who we are. I mean, you've got to know that we're talking about alleged ETs here. We don't even know where we come from. We don't even know what our nature is, who we are. So if we don't know who we are, it makes it very difficult to understand. We're missing massive pieces of the puzzle here.
Yeah.
Is there something that we don't know about our own genetics, our own genome, that is the missing piece to that puzzle, and that would fill in? There's a number of blanks there, but it might fill in some of those blanks to talk about who we are. And yesterday, you and I, we were talking about CRISPR. Do you want to talk a little bit about the CRISPR?
Well, I'm not a scientist. I've not got great knowledge on this, but for people that don't know, it's in its simplest form, I would say it's a DNA editing tool.
Yeah.
Would you describe it as that? I mean, I don't know whether people would describe it as that, but I think it is. And over the years, people have emailed me about CRISPR, and they've taken it to an all new level and created all sorts of cryptids and everything through this DNA editing that's there. It's a possibility. There's something there with it, altering the genes. But I don't know. Is this the missing ingredient that we've needed to actually, I don't know, find out our true origins? Or have we been manipulated throughout time by an advanced intelligence? I mean, looking at the civilizations from the past, and I know that you've made a list of them, Chris, haven't you? It would appear so. It would appear that we've had interaction or being interfered with by unknown others, races from the stars, from God knows where, to be honest with you, that have, manipulated mankind for their own needs. And it makes you wonder if they've done that to other species on planet Earth, or whether we were just the perfect species for what they wanted. And I don't mean we're perfect, just perfect for what they wanted. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's being sort of recognized. And I think obviously the general public don't keep an eye on scientific publications, but there's people I follow, people like Greg Braden, that have been tracking this sort of chromosome fusion of ours for a long, long time. And I think when I looked up that CRISPR yesterday, I think it was 2012 when they officially announced that they now had the skill set to edit DNA. And so basically what they're saying is, like you said, they now can create pretty much anything.
Yeah.
So if that's being recognized on a public level, how long has that technology been available to the, I'm not going to call it the military industrial complex. Well, we need to come up with a term that's not going to get us thrown off YouTube, but
yeah.
but those guys have had this technology, and I would imagine that tech's been around for a long, long time.
I would, and let's just play with the idea though that going back in ancient history, mankind's been interfered with, if that's the word, by another. Well, I know by another race. Can't be allowed to say that. By another race that's had maybe not that technology, but something very similar. Then it's a frightening concept, because theoretically they can create animals or plants that are unnatural. And as you know, it's a massively dangerous trait, because most of the time when advances are made with science, and through academia, eventually it'll get used for some nefarious reasons, and that's the terrifying part of it. Because via CRISPR, could they create naturally aggressive animals, animals that can disrupt ecosystems? And the big question for me is, are some of these the cryptids that we're seeing today, the genetically modified animals? If somebody had said this to me 4 or 5 years ago, I'd have probably, I wouldn't have been disrespectful, but I wouldn't have ran with it. But it's fascinating that these advances in science now, the DNA editing, make this possible. Not for me, I can't do it in my workshop. I don't like that, but
well, I just think look, I had a quick look over the last couple of days because we've been researching around these topics, haven't we? And I think 90% of cultures around the world believe in the gods either from the heavens or from above, or they've been given advanced technology or culture or any of that. So it kind of makes sense that, all right, 90% seems really high, but in the scheme of things, because of what I do, and editing over the last 6 or 7 years, editing anything from Sitchin's work to who else, Dogon Tribe and the serious stuff. To me, it just seems like if you follow, let's follow the biblical. I don't know whether it's a necessarily biblical story, and I don't know necessarily whether the word Anunnaki has been decoded correctly or translated correctly. I don't think it has personally, but the crux of the matter is that these guys came from elsewhere, found a hominid on Earth, tweaked the chromosomes, and between 200 and 300 years ago, 1,000 years ago, they happened to create basically man, which was something, a Homo sapiens sapien, which is completely separate from the rest of the hominids. With the intelligence, we can now go to the stars. So that's the difference. This is almost like a god gene was was put into us, and from reading the biblical accounts, it seems like that was when they were doing that. I don't think they necessarily knew what the outcome was going to be, because the story goes that some of these gods were not happy with what we were doing for various reasons. I think
we were doing, humans.
What humans were doing. I don't know whether that's because they were rebelling or whether it's because they were creating demigods. So we were sort of mixing with, we'll call them the gods because they call themselves our gods. They're not the creator. And that's another misconception. I think there was a bit of tomfoolery in there. That's probably not the right word, but I think they were definitely coming into these societies saying that we are your God.
Yeah.
And it was just took that they were the gods, but they didn't say we were the creators. They said we were your creators.
Do you think that could be part of the reason? Let's assume there's some truth in that. And there's a lot of information going back in time to show that the ancient races believe this, the ancient peoples believe this, and it's we're talking about it today. Do you think these could be some of the reasons that the powers that be don't want us to know that we were created as a slave race for something like the Anunnaki?
I think there's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? Because I think Yeah, because the minute you start, you've then got to everything, the foundations of everything that's present now, our existence here, everything falls to pieces. And this is just not just in a religious manner either. This asks a lot of questions about a lot of things. And back to the drones a little bit, and back to disclosure in general. We've talked about this before about a lot of people really don't like Stephen Gray's work, but I find it difficult to disagree with at least 50% of what he's saying, based around the technology and the release of. If you release the information that we've been sitting on technology that could change the world, not overnight, but it has the power to do it overnight if you wanted to. That's an interesting.
Yeah, I've just noticed.
So someone's mentioned Gray. I mean, in this conversation again. Not to be disrespectful to Stephen Gray, I don't agree with a lot about the love and light aspect of it, because in my understanding and the people that I've spoke to, witness you being one of them, you can't say that every single contact situation, negative contact situation, is a CIA op. I mean, no. I'm just not having it, I'm afraid.
Absolutely.
I would agree. It just sounds implausible to me, and certainly when these things have been happening over hundreds of years, it doesn't stand up.
And not just that, Chris. I mean, if every contact situation is an operation done by some military or some external unit and nothing to do with the unknown others, why are they? What's the benefit that they would get from doing it from Joe Bloggs on the street? I don't get it at all, really. There's plenty of people that if it were DNA that they were wanting to sample and test, there's plenty of people that that they could use and do that on without invading people's properties in dead of night. I don't think that it's all psyops.
No, it's not. But I certainly agree. And I think this is where this is why you're never going to get disclosure, or it's not certainly the disclosure that all the rest of everybody watching this is looking for, because you have to. There's no way that you can bypass the technology aspect of it. You can't bypass the fact that you've got technology to heal, to have 0 point energy, to completely eradicate hunger, to completely eradicate fossil fuels. The world we would be back in what they term in the Bible as the golden age, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we would. But to give that information out, to give that to benefit mankind, that somebody out there would lose power. They wouldn't have the power, the grip that they've got on us at the moment. And it all comes down to power in everything, every walk of life. Everything's about power, isn't it? Every echelon, every job you do, there's somebody at upper part of that job who's holding the power, and they're not going to relinquish it. And they never are. That's why they've got to hold on to all this information, because to release the information, it'd be the perfect world, wouldn't it? There'd be no money. There'd be, everybody would be able. It'd be an impossibility as well, I think, because you'd still have the same people who are still doing the same absolutely heinous, terrible crimes. You'd still have all that happening. They wouldn't just suddenly heal and have little butterflies flying around their head overnight. There'd still be that element out there.
Yeah, we're at a critical point now, and I guess that's why this whole remember the flood myth. Apparently, I mean, one of the supposed reasons for the Great Flood was to eradicate man from the earth, because they'd got to a point where they were just too destructive. Maybe they'd got to the point where they had advanced technology and they were looking to get out into the solar system and create mayhem. That wouldn't have been the original plan. Let's go out there and create mayhem, because I'm pretty sure they would have met the big bully out there, possibly, if they'd have tried that. But if the people going out there have that nature within them, which they do, to be in that position in the first place, your average Joe Bloggs, like was just mentioned in the comment there, by nature, that's not how we're made. And it's only when you look at it's only through, I would say, falsely manipulated propaganda that we are divided. You name it, we're just divided. It could be religion, it could be sexism, it could be rich and poor, it could be your race, it could be any number of things. But that is so evident everywhere we go now that that's all it is. It's constant division. There is nothing uniting anybody. So the idea that disclosure might unite people again, there's a lot of people think that,
No.
that's going to happen. I'm sorry.
Everything's so fragmented, isn't it, and separated. The
Yeah, and
disclosure is not going to unite people. You talked on about the flood. I'm not religious in any way, shape, or form, but when you think about it, that were all about genetics. One species of each kind, if we're to believe it. Do you know what I mean? If the ark and we looked at what went into the ark, and it were a man and a woman. It were a male and a female. There were no fragmented elements of the species. I think that's as safe as we can go on that subject, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a metaphorical side of that as well. You know, I mean, there are some Christians really believe that an ark was built. I mean, I find that very difficult to believe. Well, but again, I'm not an expert in scripture, so you know, I don't want to get too deep into that. Other than the fact that, you know, if you were to follow the Bible by its letter, obviously that's not what happened.
No, and it's only an interpretation, the ark, isn't it? You know, the ark could have been something else. You know, they talk about the ark, the leveling armies, when we're talking about the Ark of the Covenant. It leveled armies in its path. And then they found a huge drum in Ethiopia that they believed were the ark. And we basically, it boiled down to, we know this is not unexplained phenomena. They believed that this warrior would be banging the drum as he walked into battle with the armies behind him. So the ark leveled armies in its path. You know, loads of interpretations for everything, isn't there? So just our view of it, and usually we fit our narrative into what we want it to be.
Yeah, so you know, that just talking about who we are, where we're from. That again, I think it's such a fundamental part of this discussion tonight about talking about we're trying to find out. I think there's probably various types of, we'll call it, I think, you know, a lot of people don't like that abbreviation, the NHI. But I do, because it kind of feels a bit John Keely. Do you know what I mean? The Ultraterrestrial. It feels more, and Jacques Vallee, that's the sort of angle. And I think two guys with a lot of experience, I think would be daft to discount the knowledge, especially Jacques Vallee.
Absolutely. And can you imagine? Well, obviously, Jacques Vallee is still around, but am I right? I think he is.
Yeah.
What they were talking about, what they were writing about decades ago, is current now. That's what's fascinating, isn't it? They were so ahead of the thinking. Absolutely. So anybody who wanting to buy some good books, look these guys up. Jacques Vallee, Passport to Magonia, and I think
I've got a couple here, actually. I'm not in this room, but I have got a couple here. And it makes you wonder, Paul, whether, I mean, I don't know, it's probably someone who would need to, who's been around the subject a bit longer than me. I wonder if at the time when these guys were coming out with those theories, whether they were sort of a bit like what happened with the reptilian thing, where they just brushed to one side a little bit, you know, just to kick, like you said, your terminology, kick it down the road a little bit.
Yeah, just kick it a little bit further down the road.
Keep the extraterrestrial hypothesis current, because that in itself, the extraterrestrial hypothesis, I'm a little bit more open to it now, just because I spent the last month doing some editing on some quantum stuff. But yeah, I mean, God, the jury's out with a lot of this stuff. All we're doing is throwing ideas about. So let's get to this question from Lee Eiley. They keep saying there are two different types of drones and orbs. Do you not think they're gathering info off the orbs as they're over important areas? Trump's ordered them to be shot down.
I don't know. I don't know whether these two bits of technology are working together or working against each other. Has anybody said that there's sound coming from these objects, Lee? Chris?
I think from what I understand, it has been reported, but I've also read today from multiple sources, both mainstream and ufologists that I follow, that 90% of these sightings are misidentified. So we then have to reduce, because we know, look, I don't think it's been done on purpose, not at all. No. It's just the nature of it's exciting, you know, especially for us guys in the genre. Like, it's very exciting.
I'll give an example of that before we jump to that question. Myself and Steve Ashbridge used to go up onto the Wolds, limited cameras back in 2002, 2004. We were just interested, you know, like everyone else. And we'd see a light at the front, and we'd see a light that formed a triangle. And we think we've seen a flying triangle. Well, we've seen a triangle, and it's gone over, it's high, we can't really hear anything. And when your kit gets a little bit better and you're looking, you've got a light at front, you've got light on each wingtip, and there's a tail. It's an aircraft. You know, I've been as guilty as everybody at misidentification but then talking about we've seen a flying triangle. You know what I mean? It's easy, isn't it? It's easy done. And with advent of all these drones now and all eyes on sky, if you've never looked at the sky for any length of time, if all you've done is watch TV and go about your daily business, but suddenly you think, hold on a minute, this is on news, this is interesting, I'm going to go out and have a look at this. And then you do see some lights, you might get it wrong.
I think especially if you've not got the right kit as well, because very few people have got the right kit to distinguish what these things are. Most of the videos I've seen are filmed on a mobile phone at night, which, you know, they're just not made for that. That's just not the way you would identify anything.
I see Lee's just, sorry, Chris, Lee's just put, but not all drones make noise. I think all of them make a little bit of noise, Lee. I think the quietest one is the ghost drone. And obviously if it's up, I don't know, up above, I think it's up above about 150 feet, you'll not hear it, but you could hear it lower down. But you make a good point. Did we miss a question, Chris? I don't know, but if we did, apologies.
Yeah, I think we did. I think what it might have been Alan. I don't know who put that one up, but I think what he was saying is that is it potentially that
that's the one.
Yeah, maybe the first couple of drones were legit, or we'll call them UAPs. Yeah, because I think drone is. When someone says drone to me, I automatically just think drone. I just think that it's ours. So and then the Black Ops military sent up their drones. Yeah, I mean, look, anything's possible. This is not a bad comment, Brett. Actually,
but what I find fascinating here, Chris, is the fact that military have sent their drones up to intercept these, and they've sent jets up, and they're not touching them. That's the ingredient I'm fascinated with, and it don't mean. Does that tell us then that they're deliberately not trying to connect with these things because they're ours, and or is it telling us something else? We genuinely can't connect with them, or are they holograms? Are they holographic? Because there's talk of them just switching off, just vanishing. So so we're seeing something in sky. We're looking at something that's holographic. That's why I asked if they were silent. I forgot why I asked if they were silent.
Yeah. Well, you make a good point. Are in yours, is it mainly? Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a few reported in the UK, Alan, as far as I know, but not what we're hearing about like over in the States. But
there's 3 bases here. I can't remember 2 of them, but one's Lakenheath, and I think is it Cottishall or Cottershot? Somebody correct me in chat, please. But there's 3 bases, and interestingly, all bases that are holding nuclear weapons.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Also, I mean, look, the other thing that obviously springs to mind with this stuff is that if this was a genuine situation with ET, if I look at the track record of the military as a whole as to what they do with ET technology, they blew it out of the sky. So,
well, I think that follows on with a question there from Dragonborn.
Yeah, right. Yeah, thanks, Dragonborn. Yeah, they've not managed to shoot one down. I mean, yeah, we all know. I mean, we obviously, again, we're speculating to a degree, but I'll take the word of people like Corso and, any number of other dozens and hundreds of military witnesses over the years that they have the capability of shooting these things down, using scalar radar and weaponized radars now and other God knows what they've got.
Well, do you know Jack Hills? We've had him on Truth Proof live stream.
Yeah.
We maybe ought to get Jack on for half an hour to talk. We could have done with him tonight, because he's ex-military and he's got some knowledge of this. And he says that, we have the technology to just drop these things out at sky. He says that's the bit I can't understand. And he's not talking about dropping them out at sky with some kind of weapon, as in bullet or rocket. He's on about dropping them out at sky with electronics.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm absolutely right. I think they've developed the technology now, and I think it's back engineered technology as well. So that's a bit ironic. And if you believe, I don't know whether I believe the whole, they shot the Roswell craft down by a pure accident and they realized, it wasn't meant to be. But considering that they'd touch base with with UFOs way before Roswell anyway, it's potentially that was intentional. So Lenny's saying there that some footage today where these drones with navigation lights on approached an orange sphere static in the air, and the drone was could it be
fell out
that
of the sky? The drone with the nav lights fell out of the sky. That's interesting.
Well, it's interesting that it's an orange sphere because you've got a bit of experience with the spheres, haven't you?
Absolutely, and I think everybody probably in chat, if who've had some kind of sighting, most of people, majority in chat will say, and it's airborne. We're talking UFO, UAP. They'll say we're an orange sphere. There's these spheres. I mean, you've seen them, Chris.
Yeah, I was reading up today about. I put some notes down here somewhere about the amber, the color of the light. Because remember that night Jerry saw them, and Jerry's obviously a lighting specialist as well as an engineer, an audio engineer, and I found something about when these UFOs the magnetic radiation makes contact with sodium in the atmosphere, that's what it creates. It creates a yellow-orange plasma in the visible spectrum at 589 nanometers, I think it stands for, does it?
You've done well to remember that.
Nano, whatever. Again, we are definitely not scientists of any description, but it's interesting that, obviously near the ocean, obviously there's a lot more sodium near the ocean.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I wondered whether the fact that when the lights appear often behind you and they're not over the ocean, where they would imagine there's less sodium.
If you're wondering if intensity is less.
Yes.
Is that what you're going to say? Right?
Yeah, well, the white, aren't they? A lot of the time.
They have been. We've seen orange ones, over land, particularly on Wolds.
On the wall. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But that's a point I've never thought about. If it's something to do with sodium or salt, should we say, that when they're over ocean, they're absolutely. But there's red ones seen as well. There's been blue ones. All sorts of. But it makes you wonder if there's something structured behind that glow.
Yeah, well, again, we're just batting, like you said. You always say it. We're just batting ideas around here. We're throwing ideas about it, and often, sometimes on these streams, a scientist will watch this and go, "Oh, actually, yeah, I'll look into that," and they'll be able to add a little bit of weight to what it is we're saying. I'm pretty sure, the guy at Heston, I'm pretty sure I read today a little bit of his research about what he thinks causes that.
Is this the main scientist? Oh, there's David behind in. Nice, David.
Yeah.
Good to see
Hi,
you.
David. Let's tackle that question while we're here.
Right, I want to go back to Astarlan anyway in a minute. Go on.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. David's just mentioning, we're back to the idea of shooting these things out of the sky. That I would agree, David, that's what I think these things are.
Yeah, and it was David that put me onto the vehicles that I can't remember year. David, can you? I think it was 2017. And David's a former lived in area, should we say? And he contacted me and said he'd just seen these military vehicles, and sure enough, then we did a bit of tracking, and they were there, and it were at a peak time when there were a lot of activity and a lot of things being seen. And I'm always repeating this, but for the people that say no, they were just sort of testing some kind of new tech. If it's new tech that they were testing, then it's same tech that's been described in Coast Guard and lifeboat logs back in 1950s. But when they first started documenting this stuff, and they're saying we've been out to amber lights, orange lights over the sea, suspected flares, and all that kind of stuff. And they haven't changed. The description stayed the same. So the tech's either absolutely incredible and doesn't need perfecting, or it's something that's natural, unnatural phenomena. It's here, it's residing. But does that make sense? A natural, unnatural? But there you go.
Yeah, I think, I think we're always, throughout this stream, I think we're going to be coming back to the drone, because I think there's a lot about the situation with the drones and politics and you name it, everything going on. I don't think we've ever politically, or even like as a culture, as a modern culture, have we, I think at times we often think, because of technology and AI, I think we fool ourselves into thinking that we're in some sort of better situation, and we're really not. We are, if you look at it as a society, we are actually devolving. We are going, nothing works. Name me something institutionally that works, or rather works for the people. should I say? That's probably a better way of phrasing this, because I can't think of one. I was thinking today, what actually works? And actually, the more you think about it, none of it works. And just to come back to a point, you got me thinking yesterday when we were we did a pre-call about this stream, didn't we? And you were talking about if they've got this technology, and because I was insisting that these are, that we've got this technology, what wasn't I? And you were saying, well, why haven't they used this technology? Why haven't we resolved conflicts with this technology? You were saying, and I thought about that and thought, he's got a point. I'm going to look into that. And then it suddenly dawned on me that the conflicts that these people that with this technology do not work for us.
So they're above the opposing nations.
It doesn't serve it. Yeah, they're not serving the people. Modern day law, if you want to call it that, does not serve the people, and it's not in the people's interests, and it's not in anyone's interests but the people. Look, if you're going to have a fight, you need a fight promoter, as Jordan Maxwell used to say. I don't know if you ever listened to Jordan Maxwell. He was amazing, but that's what he used to say. If you want to fight, you need someone to promote the fight. So
you give me visions when you're talking about you give me visions. People might remember it. Well, loads of people remember it, of Jason and the Argonauts when they were being manipulated by the gods.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Simplified it, guys, but you know what I'm saying. But
well, look, I think it's a great analogy actually, because that kind of is what's happening, isn't it?
Yeah, we're being played, absolutely. So what were we doing with Stalin?
I was just talking about. I mean, obviously, it's a place. I know that Carl Crusher went, and I watched those videos. You had him on your show, didn't you, a few weeks ago? Yeah. It's a place I think we should definitely visit. So you wanted to say something, didn't you, about Stalin?
I think you touched on the fact that one of the scientists, head scientists saying what he's saying. I don't know whether I'd maybe got that wrong.
Yeah, there's some science on there about what he thinks. I think he's calling them UAPs or UFOs or whatever it is, or extra-dimensional craft or whatever you want to call it, ultra-terrestrial craft or whatever you want to call it. But
I won't want to speak for him because I don't know the man, but I know he's a very, very good friend of Philip Mantle's. I think Philip classes him as one of his best friends. This is, as Philip will say, the chief scientist at Stalin. And they don't clash. Friends don't clash. You just disagree. Philip thinks that this is just natural Earth lights, Earth phenomena. That's what Philip believes that a Stalin phenomena is. But the scientist that you've just been talking about, if it's the same man, firmly believes that these are some kind of UFO, some kind of unknown other that's presenting. I'll tell you what I found interesting. When Carl Crusher went out there, and he only took a psionics camera with him. He says he's taking his night gear and all that tech with him, but it was a psionics, which was a night vision camera. But he were looking at the lights, and he's looking at shafts of light, and in awe of it. Not just Carl, a lot of people. To me, that was Northern Lights, and I wouldn't have known that until we've seen them at Bempton this last year, and they literally look like beams of light coming up from the sea or coming up from, obviously, on the land at Stalin. And you just wouldn't have known it. I would have been totally unaware of these pillars, and that's what they were looking at. And some of this possibly could be earthbound phenomena.
Yeah, I think I would disagree with Philip just for obvious reasons, really, just from experience and just from witnesses, and really do military chase Earth flights with jets, because we've witnessed it on multiple occasions firsthand. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen it happen. So
absolutely, we've been up on the Wolds, myself and Steve Ashbridge. We've seen the lights, and David Hind used to come out with us, and we've seen the lights. I don't know whether David's seen the military, but we've seen them. Sphere of light just literally switch on from nowhere, pinged into 2 or 3 different lights, disappeared. We're sort of thinking, having a buzz, that's been worth coming up. We've seen something unusual. Within 10 minutes, there's military jets just literally skimming the land real low, and there's nobody up there. There's no. It's very, very sparsely populated, so they're probably flying a lot lower than they should be, and they're just tearing the sky up. And it's not the exercise. You're not seeing them in conjunction with the lights. You see the lights. There'll be a time span of 5 to 10 minutes, and then you see the jets. So they seem to know. Briefly, just a story that I told on Truth Proof. A commercial diver called Peter Fergus. He he were taking a not a rest. He were in between jobs, and he teamed up with a Flamborough fisherman who'd got a cobble, little fishing boat, whilst waiting to go deep sea diving again. And he was at Flamborough, and he was going down, diving down, and getting lobsters, which were sort of just probably like grazing cattle, but on the seabed. You know what I mean? I don't mean there'd been hundreds of them, dropping them in the boat. This particular day, there'd been a massive swell and lots of disturbance. Couldn't see nothing, but the seasoned fisherman from Flamborough said, if we go around into that cove, I think there'll be some really big cockles. I think that's what they were, cockles. And so that's what they did, and they found them. And he says, we filled 21 fertilizer bags, his exact words, full of these shellfish, which went to something Pickles in Hull. Linny might know what the pickle place is because he's from Hull, but I can't think what they call it. But anyway, cut a long story short, they're having the break. They sat on some rocks, an outcrop of rocks, just having the break. He says, now just look, it's lovely clear sky. He says, and there's a little oval-shaped cloud. This is 1974, I think. So picture this tech. He says, and the cloud cleared. He says, and there's what you can only describe as a tic-tac there, glinting in sky. He says, it dropped to the surface of the sea and just stopped dead. He says, and then accelerated away towards Filey and were gone. He says, and my fishing mate, the guy, he says, all he saw were like it had left no sound, but it had left like a trail, a cut in air as it had gone. And he said, within 10 minutes, he says, lightning aircraft comes, 2 lightnings come straight over the top of us in that direction. Somehow they're able to detect these things. I mean, I'm pretty sure that was, you know, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, Fortune makes a good point, though. How do we know they're even trying to shoot these things out of the sky as far as we know they haven't? Yeah, and that's true. I mean, the only probably hostile thing that they would consider...
Pickles, thanks, Ian. Yeah, that's it.
The only thing they consider hostile is the fact that they're actually there in our airspace. That you know, if that would be considered a hostile act, I assume. From the, I mean, it wouldn't take much really to aggravate the military, would it? Let's be honest.
Well, do you know, Chris, that leads on to why I keep thinking to myself it's something to do with our technology. The very fact that they've not tried to shoot them out of the sky, or they haven't been successful really at getting them out at sky, removed from the sky or the airspace, because otherwise, the nature of the human is, if we find something that's interesting, find some kind of new tech, we want to exploit it, we want to manipulate it and advance it for best of that nation, usually to, I don't know, go to war on another nation. So that there's that scenario, isn't there? If it's a food source, then we just absolutely deplete it till it's gone. So there's no reason why. There's got to be a reason why these things are being seen every night. We're so numerous, yet we're not being able to get near them. And I'm 14. It could be the fact that we don't want to because they're our own.
Yeah, it could be that, and also I think, you know, realistically, depending on where the drone is, obviously, we'll call it public safety, but they probably don't want to do something like that over, I don't know, an airport or something like that, for example, or a populated city, or.
Yeah, but that leads to the question, Chris, where they're coming from, because they can't just arrive at point B from point A. They've got to travel from somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I briefly saw Alan saying that. Did you see the recovered drone that they found at the side of the road? I mean, it just conveniently. So there's a lot of funny smelling things going on, isn't there? And again, you know, more often than not, that's the kind of tactic that these people employ to very much muddy the water. That's exactly the kind of thing that they do, because it's just confusion. So for every one very credible witness account that sees something incredible, it just gets lost in this murky, you know, water of just 99% of misnomers, I suppose you could call it. It's either ours or theirs, or the word technology, that's it, but we won't ever. Yeah, good point, Stephen. I think you're right. We won't ever know. And
well, you know, in this case, Chris, I'm not just being contradicting it for the sake of it, but we might, because I think it's unprecedented that we're actually getting lots of news coverage and lots of, it's not just like internet gossip on different forums and UFO forums. It's actually it's mainstream now, so they're obviously wanting us to be aware of it, aren't they?
Well, I think do nothing because I mean it could be that the fear the repercussions of I mean I think it's a logical thing to worry about what might happen if you do this, because let's just say, I mean, they've identified them as drones, meaning that this is a reconnaissance vehicle from something else. So is that something else that they fear? But again, I find it very difficult to buy into the whole notion that now I think Stephen Greer has recently said something like that he believes that disclosure's around the corner. There are major moves being made in with the new governments and all the rest of it. And that I think the ETs are now part of this push, and some of the presence is to identify this fake presence. That's his angle. So we might see something incredible to shine a light on how this is ours, if you know what I mean, because there'll be a clear distinction between the two. So we wait and see.
Is it signs and wonders in the sky? It's almost biblical, isn't it?
Well, it sounds biblical, and I don't know. Look, if you read it makes me wonder. I just did something the other week on the Torah codes, the Bible codes.
No, tell us about it. I've not.
Well, I think the Torah. I know a little bit about quite a bit, but it's to do with there are codes in the Torah that tell everything about that's going to happen and will happen. So you can put. Apparently, they developed a computer program. I think it's back in the 90s. There's a book there. Is it Michael? I can't remember the author's name, but he released a book called The Bible Codes, and essentially, they ran a series of dates and events, and the big event that happened in 2001 that was in the Torah codes, and it spelled out exactly, and it spelled the World War II stuff. It spelled it all out in the Torah. So it'd be interesting to run some of this stuff potentially through around this time, what's going to happen. Now, whether that's legitimate, it sounded like there was definitely something in it. But again, anything tied to that, I think you've always got to just take a step back. And that's what I've done with this drone situation. I've just took a little bit of a step back and just had a broad look across what is actually going on. And I think that's probably the best method. But what's that? So have either of you seen an uptick in drones or related things in your areas at all? In my area, I haven't. Other than there was the sighting, obviously, at Manchester Airport about 3 weeks ago, was it, Paul? Something like that. It looked like a blue tinted coloured orb that was at the airport. And apparently, I'm hearing, or I've been told that the guy that posted that, the pilot that posted that, nothing's been heard from the guy. And that's probably just down to his bosses. I don't think he's officially allowed to do that on the job. So that's the only one I know of. Other than the stuff that we see, the stuff at Winter Hill gets sighted pretty regularly.
I think we're experiencing it up there. I mean, I've not been up for. It'll be going on 2 weeks because of that back injury, and it's the first time I've been able to sit relatively pain-free, to be honest with you. But so I'm pleased about that. But this Linny's in chat. The sphere that Linny got on thermal, that footage is incredible.
It is incredible.
What is it? Is that a drone? I mean, well, we don't know. We aren't going up and touching it or managing to retrieve it. We don't know. But it was there. It was silent. It were only 200 yards away from us, and it were there. The sphere of light that I saw with Mark when his torch hit it, and that incredible thing with that one, followed contours at land. I never get sick of telling people because it took me by surprise. The sky's clear, and his torch must have just touched it. He activated it. It lit up and switched off. Jeremy saw it. A few days later. I think we're experiencing something similar.
My wife's just put who's Lorraine, who's admin tonight, and she'll be admin all the time. Has just put in that I did see something a few weeks ago where we keep the hall, where we used to keep the horse. It's actually near Winter Hill.
Yeah,
and I did see something in the sky. Again, not got the right kit on me at the time to film it properly, but again, it was like glinting orb in the sky, and that's about as much as I can say about that. But this is completely different, though, isn't it? These drone sightings are in your face. It's almost like deliberately in your face, which again screams to me like, "Hello, everybody," and then the reporting on it, which they never do. And if you remember, there was a lot of events happening back in if you imagine that major event that happened in 2020 to all around the world, there were you've got to think there were almost 1 million people in London one weekend marching, and that was never reported. So it makes you wonder, why is this being reported everywhere now?
Because
because
they want us to know? They want us. That's the thing, isn't it? But then I'd ask why, Chris. Go ahead. There's a question for you there, Chris.
Have I personally experienced anything? Yeah, I've experienced a few things. I've talked about this on the show. I'll just go through it really quickly. I experienced a little orb in my living room when I'd interviewed David Icke and came back, and that appeared. It was about the size of a tennis ball, actually. It was like an amber, yellowy colour. And that just appeared in my front room literally for a second. And it was just, look, it could have been coincidence that I'd just been interviewing David Icke. It probably, who knows, it could have been just a coincidence. I have seen a craft a long time ago above, ironically, Winter Hill, which is where the WIT team and myself have had reports from often. And obviously I've seen the lights up with Paul. I've seen them on a number of occasions now, and I think they are something entirely different. So I don't know what it is. I mean, look, it's nighttime and they're amber coloured and they're spectacular, aren't they? And there's, I think there was about 8 of them in a row at one point, just across the sky, and then the jets come on. Yeah, I think that all evening, the fact that it was quite special because there were just multiple witnesses, and it's definitely not. We weren't having, what do they call it? We weren't delirious,
mass sort of
mass hysteria.
Hysteria. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, we're interested. I think we'd been to Chris Evers' OLM conference. Is that correct? And we came back and went back up onto the cliffs. So Matt Farnell, Janine, Jerry Denning, there were a few others. But what we never reported on, or we did, but briefly, when we looked down onto rocks, and I think there were only me and you saw it, and you went, "Are you looking at what I'm looking at?" And there was a silver sphere down on rocks, and I'm looking at it, and I'm trying to work out. You just do that. So to all the people that are far more sharper than me and you and everyone else out there, why didn't you just take a picture of it? I was trying to work out, my little brain were trying to work out what I was looking at. And there's a silver sphere on rocks. And I'm looking down at it, and Chris said, "Are you looking at what I'm looking at?" I said, "Yes." We both saw it. And it slowly moved into it and disappeared. But refreshments. Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, you're right. It's one of them, and I guess it falls under the
oldie. Can't help it.
You'll be back you'll be back up on cliffs next week. Hopefully, you're back.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd like to go tomorrow, and I made Ian laugh on Monday because I rang him. I says, "Look, I'm just not good to go up onto cliffs tonight. I just can't. I can't stand. Do you know what I mean? It's just too painful." I says, "We'll reevaluate on Wednesday," and he's laughing his head off. But we will do. We maybe get up. See David Hines in. There was something about David I was going to mention earlier, and it's just left my head. Go on then. What's he saying?
No, this comment by David Hind is Christian Films. Renan asked, as an American who's actually watching the end, is your stuff info up to date? Because the sheriff stated 50 came off the ocean. So why was it even discussed? I'm not sure. I think I don't know whether Renan's asking. That's, I guess 50 is a large number of orbs to be seen. But again, I would go back to it. Do we have technology that can do that? And the answer is yes, we do. So even if at that distance, I may have seen the footage of this. I think if the one is this the one where there's loads of sort of like orange lights that could easily be achieved at distance with modern day drones.
So you're saying then that we've got technology that can go subsurface and leave. Oh, I don't know if I
don't know whether he said they were coming out of the ocean, if they'd been seen coming out of the ocean. But as far as I'm aware, there's declassified documentation and insiders from a number of aerospace companies that have said that this technology is old. So we've had this technology for years and years. If you think about it, I think the first crash retrieval is reported to be in the 30s,
right?
Possibly even before that. So let's just say it was Roswell, just because we want to just say it was Roswell. We've still had almost 80 years to back engineer this technology, which in the scheme of things, if you look how far we've come just in the public domain, look at what Google have just announced with quantum computing. I mean, this is like public domain. We're 50 years behind. That's the rumor. We're 50 years behind the military. And if we're 50 years behind military, how many decades are we behind these aerospace black projects?
Yeah, well, yeah, you know, but I don't see how we could go back to early 1900s with it and stuff like that. I mean, you might think that we can. I think the first documented drone were in 1917. It were a remote control aircraft that was supposed to be going. I think it were looking for U-boats. Hold on, Chris has gone again. So let's have a look. Is there a link with the drones and the depopulation agenda? So this is DC production. We don't know who you are, DC. No, this is Les. So good to see you here, Les. And no doubt we'll be back on the road on Thursday. But depopulation agenda of 2030. Obviously, I don't know enough about this, Les, to discuss the depopulation agenda of 2030. Fill us in on a little bit more of it if you can. So, Brett Byre artist, hope your back is better, Paul. Well, it is a lot better, to be honest, mate. Thank you. Have either of you gone through the footage from our recent visit? No. Chris might have gone through a bit of footage from recent visit. Brett came with Chris probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. You all right, mate?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I don't know, because I'm shooting through the Black Magic tonight, so I don't know whether it's on some sort of timer. Les might know what that's about, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate. What's the question?
Right. Well, Brett came through. Have we found anything? Anything?
Yeah, I went through it, and we filmed them. I was going to post a video this week, actually. I mean, but it's pretty vague. It's really something, Paul, that you guys see up there all the time. So
I'm with you now, Brett. Yeah, what we filmed were a white sphere of light that looked like it were on the hillside in the distance, but it were a lot further back, Chris, weren't it?
Yeah, it was a lot further back, and although it kind of looked stationary over a period of 2 minutes, it did appear to drop very, very slowly.
Well,
so
one thing in its favour, because is that the one where I walked towards it?
I think so. Yeah.
And I think I filmed it as well, but it's on its camera, which were interesting because I only walked about 400 or 500 yards, and it was looking bigger. Now, if that were miles away, an aircraft, some kind of light off an aircraft,
good point, yeah.
You wouldn't change its perspective. But as I walked towards it, it was looking bigger. So maybe not as far away. And then we had that spectacular, I don't know what to call it, flash of light about 2 weeks ago. Ian will note date. Which we played on Truth Proof live stream on Sunday, and that were incredible. Driving back home, so you've going to that zone where you think you're going to see something unusual. On the way home, Ian's flashing his lights at me. And we're not going into too much detail about it. We might be able to put it on live stream next week or something like that. He says, I stopped the car. He says, I thought your car had blown up. I said, what? He says, monstrous flash of orange light as you'd just gone around the corner, and sure enough, he's got it on his dash cam. So there'll be a lot of people in chat that sort of follow Truth Proof and migrating over to here tonight. One thing, people, if you've not subscribed to the last transmission, please do. It's totally free, and it's just supporting us a little bit more. And we'd love you on board. So likewise, if you're new to this, and subscribe to Truth Proof as well. And
absolutely. I mean, you showed me that footage, Paul. It's very interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And again, it just, I mean, the idea that that's happening on your way, on your way back from the cliff tops, on your way home is, I don't know whether it should be quite worrying, actually. But
well, as soon as I jumped out of the car, Ian stopped in his van and he went, "It's you," because I'd just gone round corner, and it, for all intents and purposes, I should have seen it. I saw nothing. Monstrous flash, and it is bright, and I know people will have seen it. Let's have a look. Paul, it was 4.5. I'm not sure. Well, 4/12.
4th of December.
4th. Oh, Christ. Get your head on, Paul. Yeah, thanks, Ian. And so what's interesting, in February of this year, very similar place, driving back, raining as well again. interestingly. I pull in. He thought my car had got a fault with it. He said, everything all right? I says, massive red flash of light above car. He says, I never saw it. I said, I wonder if my dash cam's picked it up. And sure enough, he picked it up with his dash cam. He says it's me, but I'll tell you something. He's a bit of a catalyst, this fella, for the unexplained. He's got a really keen eye, and you take certain people out with you. And I always cite Lee Haywood as being one of them, and things happen. And I think it's the fact that you've gone from the stage of wanting to believe to knowing it's real, you know, and not the blind faith of just looking at a satellite and thinking it's visitors from Zeta Rectula or whatever they're going to say it is. Actually, you've had your own experiences, and you don't have to believe because you know. And this fella's seen them. David Hind stopped his car. There was some interaction with David, really. Can we see that footage again, Paul? Yeah, but not tonight, mate, because I ain't got it at hand. But yeah.
Chris, what about the light we saw after Paul and Ian left? Yeah, I got that one too. Yeah, so on that weekend we were there. On that weekend we were there 2 evenings, and we did get a light. We did film a light on both nights, actually. But in comparison, I mean, it's interesting, but in comparison to what I've seen up there, it's only, you know, it's just I won't say it's disappointing, because I've been spoiled by having that performance. So I think once you always want a better sighting, don't you? I think that's how that's why we're bloody all hooked on this phenomena, because a lot of us have had a little bit of a taste of it, and it kind of hooks you in, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're touched by it, and you're looking for more. That's just out of interest. Somebody, I don't know if you know, maybe Lorraine can see, but I can't see how many's in chat, and it'd be lovely to know how many people have been in, because we've had some great interaction tonight, guys. Are we going to run for what, another half an hour, 3/4 of an hour?
Yeah. We'll run. We're scheduled up until 9, and if there's a couple of questions over, I don't mind hanging around, and if you don't mind hanging around, we'll get them answered. But there might not be, because we're smashing through these questions, to be fair.
Chris,
have I seen Simon? No, I've not seen Simon since I filmed Don't Mention, which was a long 20. Oh no, since Repcon, which was I think 2016, so 8 years ago. In fact, I haven't heard a lot about Simon. I don't know what he's up to.
Is he still in
no
Whitby?
idea.
Is it?
That's where he lived. He was from Whitby originally, but yeah, I think after
he's a strange individual, and I've got I don't mean that disrespectfully, but he's a strange guy, Simon Parks. I've met him on several occasions, and he's unusual to say the least.
Actually, yeah. I've just seen a comment from Linny. I'll just put that up. Linny's just reminding me that when we came up that weekend, which I forgot to mention, I know you might have touched on it on the show, that Brett, who came with us, he saw the two lights on the 2 different nights, and he also saw the shadowy figure that you guys have seen up there.
And which were interesting, because he didn't know it. I'll let you finish in a minute, Chris, but he didn't know him where. He might have heard us talking about this, but he didn't know where. And when he's pointed it out, it was where we'd been seeing it.
Yeah, which is interesting, because Brett's never been up there, and you've never really pointed out where. I think you were keeping it on the down low anyway, weren't you, about this shadow figure that you and the guys were seeing up there, and Brett happened to see it. So, it's quite a successful, I suppose, visit for Brett's first time up there, which often happens.
When you break it down, Chris, and you say, well, it's not been that event, it's been a bit uneventful because you've had the spectacular sighting. All these little side dishes are all there, aren't adding to it. I mean, this shadow being or whatever it is, I've seen it twice. I've seen it once with Mick Sigson and once with Pete. I'm sure Ian's seen it. Then the Kinsella twins came up about 5 weeks ago, and Sarah likes Philip and Ron, eldest daughter, and she said, I'll come through, Dad. You know, Luke, her husband's got kids. I says, I'll have a run through and spend an hour or two with you. Sarah's not interested in unexplained phenomena. She just wanted to spend an hour talking to Philip and Ron. So we're up there on cliff tops, and Philip and Sarah both just went, because you know how animated Philip gets, oh my God, like, and Sarah's saying same, and they both saw it at the same time. And they said a figure walked across. It's about 35 foot away. Just a dark, grey, black shape of a figure. And Sarah didn't know anything about that. She never comes in live streams. Laura does, and Jess does, but Sarah doesn't. It's fascinating. So many people seeing it for it not to be real. What it is, I don't know. It's frightening though if it's got physicality, because Linny's up here, and a few weeks ago, Carl Dan and Sarah, his wife, came up and spent a bit of time with us. They're coming over at Christmas period as well. Great guy, lovely couple, and Linny's wife gets on well with Sarah, so she came up to spend an hour up on cliff tops with us. Something prodded her. She said, something's just prodded me. There's nobody there. So I find that a bit frightening. If there's a physical to this unknown other, and you're stood on the edge of 300 to 400 foot cliffs, last thing you want is somebody to prod you in dark.
Absolutely not. Yeah. What's the correlation of inclement weather and high strangeness? I'm not sure what inclement weather.
Well, Ian, you kind of make a good point. I think I know where he's going with it. Are we only seeing it during periods of clear skies, bright skies, full moons? No. We've sort of changed our attitude to looking for the phenomena, Ian, considerably. And I don't know whether other people have or are sort of interested in this, but now, if it's thick with fog, we relish going. We go now because we've been seeing flashes of light around us in the fog, and we're not. It's not like Chris touched on earlier, mass hallucination. It's not that, because sometimes there'll be 8 or 9 of us. Heidi were up here, the lady and her sister Jenny. They were seeing them. I think there were about 8 people up there that night. And we're not all seeing them together, but there's more than 2 or 3 witnesses seeing them at the same time. Low down, high up, over the cliffs. Terry Brown, who does, he's got his own YouTube, Paranormal Coffee Lounge. He came up. I'm just seeing a big flash of light below the cliffs. There's nobody down there. There's water around these cliffs just about year round. I love it. All weather conditions. Has your camera froze, Chris?
No, it's just me. I froze. Right. So we we better get on to the next question, shall we?
Well, we've got another question. Go on.
Or the next phase of this, really, we wanted to talk about what are there. So obviously I think we should probably start with you here, and you've had first-hand experiences with this, and you've probably thought of nothing else on the nights you can't sleep and the nights that they've been.
You don't.
What is your feelings about? Look, it's speculation at best, but what do you have? Are you after writing the books? And sometimes I think you said to me that when you wrote The Night People, that a little bit of stuff came to you, not loads, but on the odd occasion something had flashed.
I thought I'd have a flood of downloads of information when I was concentrating on putting it's there, isn't it? No, it's there. All that information together, and the bits of it did. But my gut feeling is that when people they're alien, we had a doubt, as in alien to everything we know and exists. That's we consider normal, but alien in true sense of the word, coming from space, I'm not so sure. I think it were almost demonic. As a little boy, when I was laid in bed in that council house in Old Denby. And what's interesting, with my back being bad, I've been sleeping in spare room on single bed, and it runs up against a wall. And I was actually laid facing that wall other day, and I was thinking about it because I've never been in that situation, as in with a bed in that position for years. And I was laid there thinking, can I remember a little bit more about this? Can I remember anything else? Basically, I couldn't advance that memory. But these things, whatever they were, they'd even speak to you. And I've not got schizophrenia, people. I've not been diagnosed with anything like that. Don't hear voices. I could hear them in a slow, deliberate language that sounded Arabic or Aramaic. That's all I can think. And it was speaking and repeating words in my ears, though it was sat on my shoulder. That was terrifying. Would that be the work of alien beings from another planet? It sounds more demonic to me. I'll be honest with you, that really does. It sounded and felt more demonic than being flown away in a flying saucer. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. And like you've just said there, Chris, it's all speculation. But I don't know that they were aliens in the sense that people would. Aliens in the sense that the guys at Hummamby, who had their experience and saw the landed craft and saw the beings, from their experience, I would say they were aliens in the true sense of the word, as in aliens from another sphere of existence, another planet, another galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm just reading. We made some abbreviations here, just looking at my notes here, and we talked about the dimensional overlap here. But I think even if they were extraterrestrial, shall we say, they're still going to be utilizing the technology that allows them to traverse space and time. Yeah. So they are going to be, for want of a better word, interdimensional, because that's the nature of the form of travel. That's how they're traversing to and from wherever they're coming to and from. So I guess the way I look at it is, I mean, the different types of beings is one of them unfortunate things, isn't it? It's just like you got the greys, which tend to make up the majority of sightings, I would have said. But I can't get past, and there's a number of researchers that have talked about this. You can't really get past the fact that Daryl Sim says it, the Kinsellas say it, that these feel like AI sort of
synthesized type.
Yeah, biological sort of things, just there to do the job, where it makes sense that you wouldn't send someone with any sort of emotional senses, because they could be, they take the eye off the ball. It's sort of like send something to do a job and it does it efficiently. It might be horrible, and I think that's the result of sending something with no emotion.
Cold and clinical, yeah.
Cold and clinical. And I guess you've asked this question many times: was that the intention?
Probably, because there are people out there who claim to have these. I'll tell you what's interesting: how it shapes a person's views on them. I've got nothing but ill intent towards whatever it is that's there, but there are other people that just think it's absolutely wonderful, and there's little butterflies flying around them. But we're still probably dealing with same intelligence, or same intelligence that's probably sent them to both parties for different things. Is that what they wanted from that person? And
you mentioned something the other night. I mean, there's a question here from Stephen. I guess it's a valid point actually here. Have I interviewed anyone that's had an alien? Yeah, I think I have. Yeah, I think I can't remember her name now. Oh, what's her name? Charmaine Rosario. She claimed that she'd had an implant, and I obviously didn't have the kit to test for anything like that. I've also interviewed a guy that claimed he had dental implants, and that were done as part of some sort of. He said he suspected it might have been DARPA or something like that. It was something, one of these black projects that he reckoned it was something to do with. It
won't be NHS.
No, definitely NHS. It could have been NHI, but he thought it was some sort of program where they were testing these new implants, and he, as a child, he were indoctrinated into this program. But you hear a lot of that. I mean, people call it the super soldier now, but I don't like saying that because it's got such negative connotations now. I think rightly or wrongly, I think there's been a few wrong uns come forward claiming to be super soldiers. I think you were even told, weren't you, that you were a super soldier at one point?
Well, let's just do that, because I don't want to sort of run anybody down, because I don't actually dislike Simon Parkes. But this is where you could actually be influenced if your mind were weak enough. I met Simon 20 years ago at a party. There were a load of people there. He made a beeline for me, talking to me for hours and hours. And he says, "I know what you are." I says, "Oh yeah." He says, "You're a super soldier." Now, if I'd have been looking for an identity, I'm a super. I'd have been running with that. And I didn't argue with him. I didn't say anything to him. I said, "All right, fair enough." But he'd labelled me, and that's what he'd called me. That's what he'd said I was, and I weren't going to run with it. But there's something to that man. There's something about that man. If you just humour me for a moment, he were doing some talks then a few years later, just practicing some talks for a lecture that he would be doing on a big stage, and he used Yorkshire UFO Society group of people as his guinea pigs, and I took one of my daughters with me, who was a bit outspoken, and she'll tell you exactly what she thinks if that's what she thinks, and he's talking about various things and he's showing images, and I'll not say what it is. My daughter just went, "I think that's bullshit," literally, and I wanted to climb under the chair. I thought, because I'd say, and he went, "Sorry," He goes, how can you say that? Where's your proof? So anyway, let it go. Simon, let it go. The talk carried on a little bit more. And she says, no, she says, I can't listen to this. She says, you're just saying things without any proof. It's a load of rubbish. That was that. However, my skeptical daughter called me the next night. That night. She says, Dad, says what? She says, I can feel eyes on me. I feel like I'm being watched. I feel like somebody's watching me. She says, it's really unnerving. She says, it's strange. I'll not go into any more detail than that, because I think everybody gets the picture. And no ill intent to Gemma or anything, and no ill intent to Simon. I got on okay with Simon, but just I think there's the dangers, say, of you, Chris, or me, or anybody coming up to somebody who's telling us a story about their alien encounter or their abduction, and me then saying, I know what happened here, and this is what's happened to you, and this might happen again, in another 5 years' time. You can't band them things about, can you? All you can do is be a sensitive ear and listen and take the information and just help without just stamping what your views of the world on it.
Yeah, I think the whole super soldier thing, just very quickly, is an interesting thing, because it's in my opinion, I think again there is some declassified stuff, but a lot of this stuff will never get declassified. There's hints at these programs, because it makes sense that that's what you would do if you certainly if you had the human genome sort of sorted, and you knew exactly what you're doing, and you could you can edit DNA and create enhanced strength and physical abilities and eyesight and all the rest of it. Of course, that's something that you would do. So I think there's very much a lot of credibility in the idea that this has happened. If you listen to the Dulce stories, that's part of what they were doing there. But again, what happens is, I think this really suits the agenda that, again, it's just any sort of topic that seems to gather some sort of traction. It's very quickly, the water is quickly muddied around that. And they throw in a lot of wild stories and start introducing off-planet battles. And suddenly people were genuinely interested in something that could have some credence. And then you lose people by talking about, I was fighting with Spock on, Vulcan. It just gets completely out of control.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Fortune's just asking, do you think there's something about particular people that draws attention from the entities? I absolutely, without a doubt. Yeah. Well, I mean, you must have thought about this, Paul.
It's human emotion, I think, Fortune, that's our way of connecting with the unknown other. I've always said it. I mean, that it is truth proof too, beyond the thinking mind. People are having interaction. We know that there's all sorts of scenarios where people see UFO or alien or cryptid that aren't related to what I'm saying. But a lot of the times it's when you're detached, as in your mind's detached. I don't mean you're in some isolated place. It's when you're in some kind of daydreaming, deep thought, thinking about something, and you've kind of detached from the real. Or if you're in a deeply emotional state as well, due to bereavement or adolescence and the poltergeist phenomena due to puberty and things like that, and you seem to supercharge the energies that are coming from the body, seems to connect and attract the unknown other. I think that's what happens. I don't know whether that's answered your question or muddied it even more, Fortian.
Well, I think, look, there's a number of roads you can go down here, from lineages to, and a lot of people talk about ancestors and that kind of thing. And we talk a lot about history and our ancestors. And like we sometimes talk about, in fact, we always talk about ancestors like the different people, don't we? We never thought about that. Whereas if you believe in reincarnation, which I do, then they might not necessarily be ancestors. They might well be us. Do you know what I mean by that? If you're reincarnating, then that your ancestor's not your ancestor, it's you. Yeah. So you're just going through a bit like... what's he called? Christopher Lambert in Highlander. If you look at that, he's immortal and he's living all these lives. But we are immortal if you believe in reincarnation. We're energy. You can't destroy it, and that's the nature of our reality. That we just. And then we're probably going to get into this, Paul, actually, about the simulation and whether this is a simulation, because there's a.
Before we do, just 1 second. Then, can you remember? I don't know, about 2 years ago, there were a mini conference at an hotel in Manchester, was it? We were both at it. Whitley Strieber came.
Yeah, in Oldham, yeah.
Oldham. Okay. We'll have to get Whitley on. We had him on Truth Proof live stream, and I'll see whether I can speak to him about this, because he doesn't know about this. When he came, greeted Whitley because I'm a massive fan of Whitley, simply because out of all the people with heads this big within the subject to a high profile in the subject, Whitley Strieber has always had time for me. Always had time for me when I'd asked him questions and I knew nothing about people within the subject or anything. Anyway, I met up with Whitley, took a few pictures with David Hind, incidentally, and Whitley were talking, and he were telling people on stage that he'd got an implant, and we touched on implants earlier, and he said it was in his ear. I think he said it was in his left ear, and he said it in the earlobe, and he'd got this implant. Now, what I found fascinating, we got somebody to take some pictures of me and Whitley Strieber stood together, and I've got 2 pictures, and his left ear is absolutely glowing like a diamond. And I don't mean a little chink of light; it's like a diamond. I've never shown you a picture. I
think you might have done, yeah.
Yeah, and I found that fascinating. It could be some quirky light deflection, but he didn't have an earring in, and I found it fascinating, particularly as he were talking about this implant in his ear on stage. So, and I've never shown him picture, so I'll get in touch with him and show him picture and see if he wants to come on and have a natter.
Yeah, I think like John is just saying there. Could those who have passed have been working on tech to make it back? I mean, I don't. When you start, like I said, I've been working on some edits about quantum physics and the nature of reality and the matrix and where quantum physics is at the minute, and the fact that I think they're 90% certain that this is some sort of simulation. It's something to do with new findings with our DNA and how it reacts and how it communicates and how it holds a certain amount of data and the way it transmits photons instantly, right? So there's a lot of talk. When we've gone a little bit off piste here, but when we were talking about extraterrestrial travel and all that kind of stuff, which is why people doubt the theory of the ET hypothesis. If you think about the fact that we can communicate just by thought, and we create by thought, and everything, and the double slit and all that kind of stuff, the more you look into that subject, the more it sort of nothing seems to be off the table.
No.
Certainly that reincarnation thing, and certainly these biblical prophecies, and how is the prophecy accurate? And I'm reluctant to call it. Look, it's just the Bible. It's a book. It's a prophecy, and how whether that's been manipulated over time, I'm certain it has. But the crux of it is there, isn't it? So again, it's just yet another angle on this whole bloody this massive. It's weird, isn't it? The more you get into the subject, you come into it just looking in one area, and you can't help but just get
you can't. I mean, it's like what you're talking about then. The mind, the communication and the intermind communication, and that I touched on it at the the awakening, about how every aspect or every genre of the unexplained has intermind communication. Every little facet of it, like from the cryptids advising people not to shoot guns, where when they stood in front of them, to the spiritualist who hears the clairaudience. To, everything, to the alien abductee who was laid on a table, paralyzed, but hears a voice directing him and telling him he's going to be safe whilst something's been performed. It's this, they have access to our minds. It's almost like they could look through us like a filing cabinet. Maybe that's the reason when somebody say, I was just about to lift my camera up, and it's gone. It knows what you're thinking before you've thought it. Do you know what I mean? It's, when people say, why don't anybody get a picture? But there again, you look at them, you've got all CCT, you've got cameras everywhere. Surely it can't outthink cameras that aren't thinking, that are just there static all the time. It's so difficult. Right, we've got Les here again. What do you guys think? Sorry, go on.
Yeah,
you might want to answer that.
No. Have you seen it?
No. I know Les has seen some of it.
I think it's pretty good, personally. I mean, yeah, it's the element of entertainment that it's got. I think he's got the balance about right, personally. Because it would be easy to go a bit wild with this stuff, but I think George, given his experience and his network, I think he's done a good job there with it. I really enjoyed it personally.
All right, And have you seen it all, Les? I've just give us a yes if you have, mate. And because we haven't talked about it, let's talk every day just about, but we've not talked about that in great detail.
What I ever consider writing, I am considering writing a book. Actually, I don't know. I mentioned it to Paul, and you said I should go for it. Really, it would be on the reptilian subject, and it would be that period of time when I was doing that research, probably 3 years, just everything that happened in that 3 years, and that's what I would do, because I got loads of accounts and stuff that I'm sure you guys would love to read if you're into that topic. And as far as I know, there's 1 or 2 interesting reptilian books out there, but nothing's come out just of late. So, and I would try and probably ground this in. It's difficult to ground it in reality, but you know what I mean. So yeah, so I have thought about it. Yeah, absolutely.
Out of interest, what are the reptilians? And it's not as simplistic as I've just said it, there, people. But look, again, where are they from?
I think that it's another subject that's been infiltrated, and there's a lot been said, and it's been twisted and morphed, and it's morphed into something that, a lot of the information about the key researchers in the genre, like just as an example, a lot of things are said about him and his research that are completely inaccurate. But that's what happens. It's probably, it's happened to me. It's happened to you. People just have these ideas about you, and something I think just happens by mistake. I think rumors spread, and everybody's, if you're not saying the right things to a certain group of people, then you're an insider, or you've been accused of it many times. So you're hiding the truth, Paul. You know what's responsible for this.
I wish I did, and I really don't. I don't know what's responsible.
It's ridiculous.
Or there's plain jealousy. You get that within subject. I just think get out there and do it yourself. Don't you know what I mean? I've had people tell other people, "Oh, he'll not talk to you. He thinks he's too good for you. He thinks he's too..." What? If these people actually knew the amount of people that I embrace in these areas and go out and meet for no profit, for no money, and it's not just every week, it's every day. So yeah, I'm just such a man of the people, and I'll help anybody I can. But that's another story. Go on then.
Yeah, just Lee's question there about what do we think about the cult up at? It's more your area, Paul, than this. We have discussed that, and it's still one of those areas that we know there's something in it. We know there's something.
There was something up there. There was some group operating up there, 1970s, probably possibly into early 1990s, and I don't think they were operating after that. And I was told they were trying to summon demons. And once again, I don't think it's the location. Well, I do say location is key. I just think it was such a deeply secretive and oppressive place that if you wanted to try and do something like that, then that would be the location to try and perform whatever rituals you were trying to perform. Obviously, I say every time the base is out of bounds. It's fenced off. It's got livestock on it, and I don't advocate anybody going onto it. But I know some, what do they call them, urban explorers did, and they recorded being underground. And I got a recording dropped through my letterbox, well, a memory stick, and there's a voice on it. You've heard it, Chris.
Yeah, I've heard it.
And they stood there in the darkness, and they're going, "Did you just hear that?" And it says, "Fool is man," but not in the tone I'm saying it. It's just, "Fool is man." And he goes, "Did you just hear that?" And it's a fascinating bit of footage, really. So is that some kind of remnant of what's left behind, or is that excited energy? And do we go in when we go to a place that's got a little bit of bad intent? Do we actually stir that bad intent up? Because we're going in with the notion that there's things of an unsavory nature here. If it were all good and fun and happy, is that the reaction we'd get? Is it the same phenomena, just giving us what we perceive it wants us to receive? It might not even know that there's a darkness to what it's doing. I don't.
Well, it's interesting that they ended up there where supposedly, if you listen to what the MOD guy told me and you, that they were doing occult stuff there anyway. So what are the chances of an occult group separate from what had allegedly happened there, being in there and picking up on that? Is that were they picking up on that? Was it notorious in those circles? Was something, was there an insider that had this gotten out that this was a specific location and that there was, I don't know, he mentioned a portal, didn't he? An energetic portal or something like that. Given the amount of phenomena that's been seen up there of all different types and on the spectrum, you can certainly believe that something had been done up there. But
yeah.
In regards, I just want to clear this up. In regards to it actually being responsible for what was happening to the animals up there, we absolutely ruled that out, didn't we? 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I'll tell you what, interesting. And I see Dragonborn. Before we just go to animals, unless you want to go on another track on 15 minutes, what are your thoughts on the reptilians? We've just covered that. What a lovely dog that is, isn't it? We've just covered that. I don't know, apart from the fact that they're described as reptilians, I don't know Dragonborn.
Well, look, this is a show in itself, and it's probably the show. One of the guys you'd probably want to speak to about this is probably Purposive, because it's the seraphim. It's the seraphim and the I don't. We're going back to the gods now, aren't we? So that and the
another amazing book, people. Purposive, holographic culture. No problem showing other people's work. But I'll tell you what, it's amazing. It's heavy, as in heavy literature. Don't pick this up and think you're going to read it. You'll have to get your head around that 3 or 4 times. Am I wrong?
No, but it is fascinating. It's an absolutely fascinating book. But again, that's just one facet of the whole reptilian story. So to talk about the reptilian stuff, you'd be here all night. So we can do that. There's definitely a show we can tackle on another
James
night.
Bartley would be good for that as well, wouldn't he?
Yeah, James. Yeah, well, again, James, we go in a different direction with James again entirely. So it's like anything. So
before we move on, then, just give us a few clues for Lorraine to sort of make note of. The direction you want to see some of these little discussions taken. Just put them, I don't know, 3 or 4 words: reptilians, cryptids, and what we'll do is we'll try and tailor. We know we've gone off topic quite a bit in this one, but we're still stuck basically to the narrative, loosely. But give us an idea, and if you want, we've got like 15 minutes left, so give us an idea of what you want us to talk about in the future, and an idea of types of guests, and if you've got any suggestions for guests, and they're going to be few and far between because it's going to be these discussion based mainly, I think, at the moment, isn't it? Yeah,
well, it is. I mean, but we are definitely. I suppose with time, with the new year coming and all the rest of it, yeah, we're definitely going to be planning on having guests on. And while we're just talking, while we've got 15-20 minutes left, we should probably. Where is it? I'll post this up because this is what we're looking to do. So. We're going to be doing that on. I can't see the date. What's the date
there? Let's have a look. I can't because we've got Ian's question. Do people who are ill have more experiences? We'll maybe get to that, Ian, in a minute. But let's have a look. 22nd of December, Sunday, 22nd.
Yeah. So 22nd of December at 8:30. So it'll be after. Actually, Paul, it's after your live stream, isn't it?
The Truth Proof live stream, yeah. I'm not sure if me and Les are doing one on that Sunday, but if Les wants to, I'll definitely do one because the last transmission shows that we're doing now have got nothing to do with Truth Proof. They're not going to interfere with any of that. Me and Les will still be running as normal.
Yeah. So that's the plan for 8:30. So it's the Christmas unexplained quiz, and we will be really testing your guys' knowledge of the subject and our own, I suppose. There'll be
testing mine.
Well, there'll be 1 or 2 quirky questions in there as well. Absolutely, and we're gonna be. There'll be a bit of humour thrown in there because, again, we should always remember that sometimes, although this is a very serious subject, people do tend to take it too serious all the time. So we're just looking to just lighten the mood, especially around Christmas as well. So that's what's happening on Sunday evening at 8:30. So do join us. We'd love to have you in there, and we'll see. Well, I'm sure between us we'll come up with a prize. So we're looking for you guys to trust you to mark your own work. But there'll be some quite obscure questions in there because I know everyone in the chat has got there's varied knowledge, but you guys have got a good knowledge of the subject. So I think I'm not going to ask you what year Roswell happened, because that would be too easy for you guys. So we'll mix it up and put some really interesting stuff in there for everybody to join in.
Like
so
a plan. Somebody's put the Fae and cryptids would make a good topic for a future show.
Yeah, so, definitely. Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, yeah, yeah, and you can talk for hours about that, can't you? You know, and the research of Nathaniel Gillis. I think I don't think we could do a show talking about his work without having Nathaniel on, to be honest.
Yeah, so, definitely getting Nathaniel on for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because he's got that's just this thing can go in so many directions, can't it?
Yeah.
This topic, and that's why, I mean, you and I put together, we put some topics together, didn't we, for this, you know, our first stream to get live stream together. But where are we at on it? I'm just going through the notes now.
Well, I've gone down, and we're nowhere near finishing it, but it doesn't matter, does it? It's
I think we were really talking about. I think we got to your experiences, didn't we? And I know Ian. This is relevant to what Ian's saying there. Do people who are ill have more experiences? And because obviously you've got more knowledge in this area, personal experience in this area. So
I think once you've been touched by it, to be honest with you, once you've been touched by the phenomena, it kind of follows you, and you can tap into it. But with obviously the power of thought, you can tap into it. Sometimes inadvertently. Sometimes when you're in a strange, altered emotional state, in a place where you wouldn't normally be. I don't know. You could be waiting for some test results for something, and it's just your mind's focused on that, and you're in an heightened state, and something happens. Loads and loads of different scenarios. What is the most memorable mind speak either of you have had? I've had one, Karen, but I'll let Chris run with that first if he's had anything like that.
Well, no, I was just going to say to you about, you know, do you class that encounter that you mentioned earlier as mind speak? You know, is that, or do you know what I mean? It's muttering in your ear. And,
no, that were audible. That were on my shoulder.
That was audible, was it? All right.
That were on my shoulder. This one, we're not to get crude about it, but because I've told it before, and I'll keep it quick because we're short on time. Me and Mary, we weren't married. Mum and Dad used to go to the pub in between 9 and 10 every night, and he'd probably have 2 pints of beer and come home, and I was sat in front of this little gas fire with Mary. We're that far apart. TV's on. Faulty Towers were on, and my mum and Dad had gone out, and I went, "Shall we go upstairs?" You know, we're all adults. That's what I said. Literally, there were just the TV and the gas fire light, nothing else, and a voice between us both just went, "Why?" and I looked at Mary. She looked at me, and we both knew that I'd not said it. It was frightening. It was weird. And I wrote about it in Night People. I call it the mighty why. The power of that word. It literally, yeah. So
you know what, that when you were telling me, I mean, there's all sorts of conversations we've had when I've stayed at your place, and we've had a few beers, haven't we, chatting into the night. But you must think it now. You know, when you moved into that house and you threw all that. Remember, you threw all that stuff out, and also there was stuff under the floorboards and all that. I mean, do you regret? Obviously, you regret.
Massive regrets, because we didn't know the interactions that I'd had during childhood with these beings that I've called the Night People. That stopped. That had stopped at about 14, 15 years of age. When we moved from the house in Old Dennerby, and then obviously you get a job, girlfriend, get married, and I think I were about 33, 34 when we moved there in 1993. I might have been 30. 1993 we moved, and it kicked off straight away. But when we moved in, it was almost like everything were too perfect. The house, the top bedroom was full of bin liners, full of letters, full. And it were all different writing and italic writing and all different people writing letters. And we didn't know what it was. And me and my dad, we got an oil drum outside. It's a huge house, this huge Victorian house, and it was just full of the occupants, former occupants' contents. We just got it with everything in it, and we're burning it all. And it turns out they were spirit letters. There'd been loads of information about strangeness in those letters. We lifted the floorboards up, and where you'd look at the wiring, there'd be a crucifix. In fact, I've been messing with one of them. I've still got one. I'll have a before I go. I'll see if I can find it. Oh, there. Look at that.
What? So that's the genuine. That's the original.
Yeah. I'm always fiddling with it in my hand, but that. So you I don't know, lift another floorboard up, looking at wiring. Wherever there were a loose floorboard, there'd be a verse from Bible. There'd be a Saint Christopher, and the upstairs walls of Bob Brown's bedroom. And I don't mind saying it because Bob knows all about this property. When wallpaper was stripped off, there were pentagrams on wall and things. Reverend Willis came. I've said this many times. The Exorcist, and he called himself the Ministry of Deliverance, and they made TV programs about him. And nobody asked him, and he came to bless the house. Me and Mary let him in. He went upstairs with me. Our Sarah followed us, and he says, "Don't let your children sleep in this room." And our Sarah's just like, terrified. It were her room. But lots of things have happened in house. Strange.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether, what's that film series called with the Warrens? Can you remember what it's called? That?
No.
Can anyone in the chat please just post the name of that film series, because I can't get it. With the Warrens, the hauntings. There's a film series.
Silver as well.
Well, I'm pretty sure that you shouldn't have kept that.
Well, there's more of them. There's loads of it. Jess said, I think it was Jess. No, it was Sarah. When I did a short and we're on cliff tops and I was with Amanda and Sarah, eldest daughter, she says, "What did we do with all those bronze gargoyles, Dad?" They were bronze or brass. A metal that wouldn't rust anyway. And when we removed paper from landing all the way around, this huge Victorian staircase, I think it were about 5.5 meters by 4 meters wide, and it just went straight to the top. You lost a lot of rooms. It was just a grand staircase, but there were little gargoyles pinned all the way around at about 3 foot apart, all the way around to the top, and with 3 copper or brass pins. I don't know what they signified and why, but they were under paper. I don't know whether any of them are.
Well, I'd be interested to hear Nathaniel's thoughts on whether you should have kept that you got in your hand. I mean, look, I'm sure
we'll get Nathaniel to ask us. I'm always it's always in here, and I'm always doing that.
Look, I haven't got much knowledge on the subject. I've just heard that there can be connection if you keep something that's
right. Okay,
I don't know, been hexed. Who knows? It's not my area. It's
right.
Nathaniel's area.
Nathaniel Gillis, conjuring is there.
Yeah, it's the conjuring. It's one of those things where I think if the place has been blessed and cleared or whatever it
didn't work though, did it? He came.
It didn't work. You got that.
well, yeah, but these were found over a period of years. This stuff. Do you know what I mean? Because it took years to get this house. I didn't have luxury of loads of money and just team of builders. It were all done with these.
Right. I see.
Do you know what I mean?
Right. Okay.
So the letters we trashed all spirit letters and everything else, and then we were discovering other things as we didn't even discover pentagrams under wallpaper in Sarah's bedroom until we stripped it all. I think we just moved in and emulsioned it for her at first.
Well, I'm just wondering. So you probably thought about this non-stop as well. So do you think moving into that house reignited this contact thing?
I think it was meant to be. I sometimes think that all our lives, everybody's, it's all mapped, everything. That's why we get these quirky coincidences. I think there might be a bleed through somewhere that you think, I haven't seen John for the last 20 years, and you're just thinking about him, and suddenly he walks around the corner. I think some things are just meant to be. And I think moving into that house, it literally didn't kick off within months. It kicked off within days. It were happening. I were coming up to that property and working on it, trying to get it habitable. You lost sound?
No, it's just this has got a laugh of its own.
We were trying to get it habitable before Mary and girls moved in, and Sarah, being eldest girl, she used to come up with us. Before we'd even moved in, I woke up with holes peppered all over my arms and seen these things just rise from landing in night, and all spindles at staircase going like luminous fluorescent tubes, and then just a white out, and then forgot all about it in the morning. It was Sunday. It was time to go home. And says to Sarah, we get home and go home to your mum and your sister. Sarah says, and then next week or two, I says, we'll be moving in permanent. And I just stretched my arms out. bang, 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 loads of little holes. And then I remembered seeing light coming up from landing. I remembered seeing beings. It looked like a nativity scene, which it weren't. And then I remember everything just going so white, it just went, it's gone.
Well, I remember you didn't you? We had this conversation, didn't we? I think it might have been when I came up there, and I was asking you, do you think that, because this is something that people that like to really sort of vehemently defend the love and light angle, they do say, well, they healed me, they helped me. Have you ever had that feeling that was the case at all?
You know, yeah, you wonder, don't you? That there might be some truth in some of that, because back in 1997, when they put holes in my back, you know, Mary took that Polaroid picture of my back, and the immense pain, the intense pain. I wonder, I have thought to myself, but I've no proof or anything to sort of go on. Had I got something wrong with my liver or my kidney or kidneys or out like that, you know? Were they actually doing something for the good of I don't know. It's a strange one. But I would, based on childhood experiences, bearing in mind that from as early as I can remember, so from 4 years old to just about teens, I used to wet the bed in fear, absolute fear. I wouldn't, and somehow the room was the place where it happened, but I daren't leave the room. I don't know how you work that one out and go to the toilet. Daren't leave the room. It was, and I don't mean you wet bed every night. That'd be a stupid thing to say, you know, but. And interestingly, if we went to Scotland to my grandparents or anybody's and we stayed, never happened. It's just that house, just that location. And I know that the neighbour, that neighbour's still alive, and I've never spoke to him about it, but I can remember my mum and dad saying that his wife worked nights and he wouldn't sleep in the bedroom, which would have been opposite mine, you know, but separated by 9-inch of brick, because he'd felt hands touching him when he were in bed that weren't anybody in house. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean the whole thing's creepy as shit, and there I am sleeping.
I'm jumping back to childhood now. Sorry, Chris. Yeah, go on.
No, I remember first time you said, yeah, you can stay over. You know, I was thinking that it was very, very quiet, and I was sat that first night when I stayed home. I'm in that room.
That room's very dark, isn't it?
Yeah, and you told me that story about your grandson and the soldiers, and I'm thinking, shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know now, and it's not because of bravery, but you kind of face them demons, and you've also faced the demons of the population, the populace, because you wouldn't dare talk about this because people are just going to say, what a load of BS. And fair crack if that's what you want to say, because I'll give them a little bit of credit. If you've not seen it and you've not experienced it yourself, you can't get your head around it. Do you know what I mean? But just because it's not your truth don't mean it ain't mine. But it's difficult, but I love the fact that we're able to come here and talk about it. See Martin Abbas is in, Tom Waters. Yeah, good to see you, Karen Behrman. Yeah, John Alexander. They Live. I'm not seen They Live, but yeah.
Oh, you got to watch They Live. It's a classic. You have to watch They Live. Again, very, very, very relevant to the subject.
Did RAF Bempton have a Sage radar tower? Duncan Cameron on the Nautical project said they were used for tech witchcraft. Maybe, David. I know it had a huge tower. And I think the tower, bearing in mind where the base is situated, I think the cliffs there are 350 feet. And the tower stood, I think, 200 feet. So you had to go up that on a ladder if you wanted to do any maintenance. I've read from some personnel who were at Bempton saying that they had to go up this ladder and do anything up on this radar mast. But he said something that I'd have loved to have seen it. He said he went up one morning up the ladder and cloud had come in from the sea and covered the land, and everywhere looked like you were on, like in an aircraft when you're flying above the clouds, and that would have looked incredible. And I know we're a place for paranormal and unexplained phenomena, but I still think that would have looked absolutely surreal.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the connection to Montauk and all that kind of stuff, because I suppose that's got a history not too dissimilar to potentially what could have gone on there. We don't know. We only know little bits of information that you've been given over the years, don't we?
Yeah, and it is little bits of information. I mean, the guy went down there who's, I won't say quite influential, but he did a really responsible job, and his wife had a responsible job, as in public figures. But he went down there in his late teens to early 20s, and when it were abandoned, and he claims that when they were down there, they looked through a glass door, and there were people in laboratory coats working.
Yeah, I remember that. That's amazing.
But when he went again, there's nothing there, and I don't mean he went again years later. I mean like days or hours. So there's, but nobody could see them, nobody could hear them. It were like they were looking into something that was a glimpse of the past or a glimpse of the future. I don't know which.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle, actually, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, look, mate. We've where are we at now? What time are we on? It's sort of like we're at that 2 hours. Yeah, Brett's just asking, mate. We'll just answer this last couple of questions. Did you look up the history of the house at all?
Yeah, and where we live, Brett, it's a terraced house, so I'm not trying to pretend it's anything different. But originally, it stood on its own in Blackburn Field, and it was built by William Blackburn, and basically, yeah, that's it. Was the first house built in the area, so it stood alone. So it's a red bricked house, really hard red engineering bricks. But either side of it, you've got white bricks, but they're not toothed into it, but they're literally right tight to it. So it's a terraced house.
And did you find out anything about that guy? What was his history? Was he connected?
Just a wealthy, influential man, and then I think one of the Lady Mayoress of Bridlington owned it at one point.
What's that, Mike saying? Yeah, there is going to be a brand new Elusive. Yeah, Elusive 2. I've already filmed some bits for it, actually, Elusive 2, and Paul and I are talking about going to Scotland, aren't we? Doing Bang McDoey. So I want Chris to be. I'm doing an interview with Chris. I want Chris to be in Elusive 2, but primarily Paul and I going. That's a doc on its own, isn't it? The Bang McDoey thing.
It's 100% my favourite or most compelling case of a cryptid or paranormal type entity or something residing up there. It's more than in my opinion, it's more than Broken Spectre. Because people report the physical feelings of this thing, the inertia as it's walking, all sorts of things. It's a fascinating, the big grey man. I can't wait to get.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, Scotland's just absolutely stunning anyway. So I think it can't hurt. Certainly me, it can't hurt me to get out of this office because I'm working a hell of a lot at the moment, and I would be looking forward. I mean, just coming up there, seeing you just a couple of nights was great. Actually, just having a break from work, so to speak. But yeah, John Alexander's just asking, should we put these out as audio podcasts? Yeah, absolutely. I'll look into that. I mean, it's one of those things that it's relatively new to me, the podcast thing, but I'm aware of the platforms and everything, so I'll do some digging around and find out where the best place to put all this is, I suppose.
Carl, I haven't, mate. No.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Again, that's a show on its own, so that's a great idea. So thanks for the question, Carl. We'll tackle that. I think that is a great show. You know, the moon.
Yeah, and do you in chat think that it would be worth us getting a guest on, even if only for 30 to 45 minutes, with an intimate knowledge of the moon, say, or the cryptid or the UFO? Because I'm instantly, when that question came up, I thought of Simon Lewis, who's wrote the book The Two-Faced Moon, and Simon's a great guy, and that might mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think having a guest on is key. We do want to do that. I think because between us, we know a lot of people and a lot of really interesting guests as well. So I mean, even with people like Nathaniel, Nathaniel could probably do 5 or 6 shows Absolutely. Easily without even thinking about it, standing on his head even. So yeah, between us, there's loads of content. Do we, Paul? Do we? Should we wait till Sunday before we announce what we're going to be doing in episode 10 of the last transmission, or because we are planning something quite interesting, aren't we? So do you want to mention that now, or do you want to leave it until Sunday?
You run with it if you want. Go on.
Well, this for the next episode, aside from the quiz, which will be in the new year, early on, as soon as we can, really. We want to do something a little bit different involving you guys. So again, Paul and I wanted this show to be very inclusive, and we want to involve you guys as much as possible and build it, I suppose, into something a little bit different. So if you've got any, that's why we're asking for like new, radical, different ideas, however off the cuff they might seem. We're open to doing all sorts of stuff. So what we have spoke to Martin Abbas, Dr. Martin Abbas, who, as Paul has mentioned, is very experienced remote viewer. Yeah. So we're looking on the next episode to do a live remote viewing experiment with you guys to see if we've got any amazing remote viewers out there. So that's what we're working on at the moment with Martin. Martin's the guy that's going to orchestrate all this.
He's going to put this together for us.
Yeah, Martin's going to put this together. So he's more than capable of doing that. He's very experienced with it. So we'll just be part of it, I suppose. I don't know if you and I can sort of contribute or take part in this somehow. And how that, I mean, Martin, I assume Martin's going to be the guy with the information. Me, even you and I are not going to know.
Martin will have the information. If he wants to, if he feels it's relevant to share information with us, then he can, because we won't be imparting it with you guys. But I think as an experiment, it would be brilliant if you could come back with some of the maybe target items, or I'm not sure where we're going with it yet. Let Martin devise it. Target items or key locations that only he knows, or three of us know. And suddenly these locations come up, even if one person gets it, but even better if two or three. Love the
I'm really interested in it. I mean, I've been interested in it. Remote viewing's one of them things. It's a bit like dowsing. It's something I've been interested in, but never really made time to sort of experiment with. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Something a bit different, and we'll give it a go. Yeah.
Yeah, and look at that, British Dowsing Institute have remote viewers. Just you said dowsing. I'm just reading that one. Yeah.
All right. Where's that?
It's just there in small. There it is highlighted. Yeah, Lorraine's just got it.
Oh, all right, cool. Well, we'll give it a go. So it's come to the end. So it's been a bit rusty at my end. Sorry, guys. So I'll just a bit sketchy at my end, just getting back into the flow of things, and Paul's held it together with his experience. So
don't be silly. I think I've enjoyed it. It's flown. It's same with Truth Proof. It's just been absolutely brilliant. I've enjoyed last transmission. Let's hope it's not the last transmission. The next one.
Yeah, well, bigger and better. We'll just keep moving with it, and as well, don't forget to you guys to tune in on Thursday to Truth Proof. You've got a guest on, haven't you, Paul?
We have. We've got Ernie. I think it's Dev. I can't even pronounce it. Devereaux, I think it is. Absolutely brilliant Sasquatch encounter and other stories of a cryptid nature to share with us. He's friends with all the right people within the subject, like Ron Moorhead and Martin Groves, and that don't make his story incredible, but I know it is because I've listened to parts of it. So fingers crossed, Ernie's going to come on and share his experiences with us, with myself and Les, I look forward to that one.
Oh, Lee, you're spoiling us already. See, now we're going to have to give... Thanks very much, Lee. It's much appreciated. So now we're going to have to give another prize out for the quiz. So cheers, Lee. I'm sure that will very much help. So we'll come up with some plan for the quiz and a prize or two for it. So yeah, I look forward to doing that.
A final thing from me then, just one last thing, because to me it's really important. Because you're supporting us all through this chat. It's literally a click of one button. It's totally free. Consider pressing the like and subscribe, please. And as far as I'm concerned, I'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, thanks very much, everybody, for tuning in. Please do click that little like thing, get the algorithm moving for us. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you guys on Sunday for the quiz. Looking forward to it. See you then.
See you. Take care.